Just gonna hear very well. Okay, that's better. We're on Daf Yud Amud Aleph by the two dots. So continuing on with the Mishnah. So we had said there were four shittas that were mentioned in the Mishnah, right? The first one was Rabbi Yehuda, and he says that, again, Soer Bifnim is to be mechaper on someone who had Yediyah B'tchila and no Yediyah B'soif, it's Taila. Then you have the Soer, the Musaf of Yom Kippur, essentially, the Soer, which is the Soer B'chutz, and that's mechaper on Ein Ba Yediyah B'tchila, Yesh Ba Yediyah B'soif. And then you have the Seirei Regalim, that's mechaper. The Seirei Regalim, according to Yehuda, the Seirei Regalim, as well as the Seirei Chodesh, which is mechaper, both of them are mechaper on a sar, which is Ein B'Yediyah B'tchila, Ein B'Yediyah B'soif. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Shimon was chaylik just on the last part. He said that the Seirei Regalim is mechaper on sar on Ein B'Yediyah B'tchila, Ein B'Yediyah B'soif, and the Soyer of Rish Chodesh is mechaper on someone who's tar, who ate something that's tummy, as opposed to all the other, the Yediyas. It's always talking about someone who's tummy, who ate kachim or went into the mikdash. Then we said the next sheet was Rameya. Rameya says, as we're going to see in the Gemara is going to clarify a lot of this, but he says that all of the musafim, all of these karbanas that are musafim, meaning except for the sir hanasa b'fnim, the sar hanasa b'fnim was the sar l'Hashem, which was brought l'fnai v'l'fnim. That's a different parsha. But the other sir, meaning the sar b'chutz and the sar of Rish Chodesh and the sar of the regalim, all of them are mechaper on all of the three different types of the yesh b'yediyah b'tchila v'em b'yediyah b'soif, yesh b'yediyah b'soif v'em b'yediyah b'tchila, and em b'yediyah v'em b'tchila v'em b'soif. All three of them are mechaper, and all three of those things that need kapara. So that's Gemara. Ramei Raima. This is quoting the Mishnah. Ramei Raima kol ha'seirim kaparas and shava. They're all equal. All of them are mechaper, and all three of them. Amar Chana bar Rav Chanina. My time of the Ramei. Where did he get this from? Amakra. Sa'ir v'sa'ir. The Torah says sa'ir. Each of these karbanis that are brought are a sa'ir. And it says, and the sa'ir. It says on the next one, v'sa'ir. Meaning, the Torah lists all of the different karbanis. It lists of Rish Chodesh first. It starts with Rish Chodesh, and it goes through the chronology of the year. So it goes till the Regalim, meaning it has Pesach, it has Shavuos, it has Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. But in Yom Kippur, within Yom Kippur, it has the Seirim of Vifnim and Bachutz, and it says V'soyer, and it says and the Soyer. It should have just said Soyer. So since it says Sar V'sar, Hukshu Kol Seirim Zelazeh. He says all the Seirim are Hukash Zelazeh. So essentially, he's going to go with the limudim that we said earlier to learn out how we know all the different things. But then we have a hekesh that puts them all together and says that all of the different seirim are machaper and all of the different the things that are need of kapara. Vav Moisef al Irishon Rishon. Mav Moisef al Inyan Rishon. The Vav is come to be Moisef and say that it's not just machaper on what it said, but also on the additional sar is also going to be mechaper. So the Gemara understands at this point that the vav is a chain. That means it says it first on Rish Chodesh, and it says vav that connects to the one on Pesach. Then the one on Pesach it says a vav. It added to the one on Shavuos, and so on and so forth. But that's a problem. The general rule is throughout the Torah that you could learn if once something is learned out with a drasha, you can then make another drasha and learn something else out from it. However, chutz mikachim, the exception is kachim. In kachim, which of course is what we're talking about now. You can't learn out something that was learned, something that we learned from a drush or from a hekesh to go learn it out again. I think this is talking about the general rule of davar halomad hekesh. I don't think it's a general. I don't think we're saying that anything that's learned out from a Xeris HaKosav cannot be relearned. It can't be used as the basis for learning something else with another Xeris HaKosav and Kachim. I think it's specifically Hekeshim. You can't make an Inlamedim Hekesh Mekesh, which we've seen before. So the Gemara's question is, so how could you learn out everything? This is a long daisy chain of learning out all the Seirim, one from the other, because each one says a Vav from one to the next. So how could Rameya say that all of the different Karbanis, Seirim, all the different Seirim of the Musafim, I'll learn out one from another, but you can't do that by Kachim. So Gemara Hale Kasha. Kulu Mikama Gamiri. It's not a daisy chain of you learn out from Rosh Chodesh to Pesach, and then Pesach teaches you Shavuos, and then Shavuos teaches you Rosh Hashanah. But rather, each one is learned individually. The Vav, it has a Vav, tells you to learn it out from the original thing that we said from Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, we say that it's Mechaper on Tumas Mikdash Ukdashav. So we learn out that all of them can be learned out from it directly. So, okay, we don't have that it's coming something that's already learned with a hekesh is then learned with another hekesh. Rather, each one, so it doesn't mean that everything is learned out from Rosh Chodesh and things. Then we're going to go from the next thing to. I'm trying to figure out a way to keep it simple. Essentially, we have the three limudim that we're going to learn out. We have Rosh Chodesh and we have Shel Regalim, according to let's say according to Reb Shimon. Meir is saying like Reb Shimon. You have Shel Regalim, which teaches you and you have the Sar Nasa B'Fnim, which tells you the Sar Nasa B'Chutz, which tells you something that has a Yediyah B'Tchila, doesn't have a Yediyah B'Tchila and has a Yediyah B'Sayf, and so on. So each one of the things, each one of the other Seirim are going to be learned from the one that you originally learned it out from. They're going to be learned out directly. It's not going to be a Davar Halamad B'Hekesh Chazav Halamad B'Hekesh. So the Gemara Tainach called the Kasabei V'Sar. That works on those things that it actually says Soyer V'Sar. Atzeres Yemekurim Deloy Kasabei V'Sar Minalan. When it says the Soyer of Shavuos, as well as the Soyer on Yom Kippur, the Torah does not say a Vav on those. So how are you going to know that the Soyer B'Chutz of Yom Kippur, for example, is learned out, that it's also going to apply to the other Karbanas? Ela Amar of Yaina, Amar Kra, Ela Tasel Hashem B'Mayadechem. Hokshu Kol HaMayadim Kulam Zelazeh. There's no, so we're switching our focus. It says Elu Tasem Lechem B'Mayadechem. All the Mayadim are Hokish Zelazeh, and these are all Mayadim, right? It's all these Rashana, even the Seirim of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is also called a Mayid. Correct the Gemara. Varish Chodesh Lav Mayidi. Good, that helps for the Regalim and for Yom Kippur, both the Sar Nasa B'Pnim and the Sar Nasa B'Chutz. What about Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh is the source for, according to Reb Shimon, for someone who was tar, who ate something that's tameh, and that's not included in Mayadecha. So the Gemara Ivra, no. Ivra Rosh Chodesh Nami Yikri Mayid. Rosh Chodesh is also called a Mayid. Kedamar Abaya, Tam is Dahi Shasa Miluhu. It's talking about at the time of by Moshe Rabbeinu, at the time that when he sent the Meraglim, and Meraglim came back, So Moshe Rabbeinu had sent them at this time of year, and right before, at the end of Sivan, and Moshe Rabbeinu wanted it to come out that they should return on Tisha B'Av. We wanted to consolidate the bad happenings all into the day of Tisha B'Av. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu was memal the month of Sivan, I think it was Sivan, to add on an extra day, even though it normally doesn't have that, or maybe it's Tammuz that he added on. He added on to Tammuz, so that way there was, instead of coming back, the Moradim come back on the 10th day, they came back on the 9th day of Av, and then it was on the same day that the Beis HaMikdash was going to be destroyed. So the Chsiv, the Amar Abaye, Tammuz da Hishasa Miluim, the Chsiv Kara Alai Moyed Lishbar B'Chure. He called it a Moyed, meaning talking about Rosh Chodesh. He made Rosh Chodesh a day later to make it that to break the Bachurim, the youth, meaning to make it that the day of sadness, of mourning, should be consolidated all on Tisha B'Av. But in any case, you see from here that we call Rosh Chodesh a Moed. So therefore, Moedech will include everything. Fine. So that is the limud for Reb Meir, who says that all of the three types of seirim that are mechaper on all three instances that need kapar. So Rabbi Yochanan says this, that Reb Meir says that all of the different seirim are mechaper one on each other. That's only starting from the sar hanase b'chutz, but the sar hanase b'fnim, which was the first thing in our Mishnah that we said is toila for someone who had yediyah b'tchila ve'en b'yediyah b'sayf, that's not included. That means that is not going to be mechaper. When that sar hanase b'fnim is brought, it's not mechaper on what the other things need a kapara. And the ones, the sar b'chutz and the sar Rosh Chodesh and the sar regalim, is not mechaper on it. It doesn't extend to the sar hanase b'fnim. That which the sar hanase b'fnim is not mechaper on the other instances that need kapara. Kapara achas mechaper ve'ein mechaper shtei kaparos. Because the Torah says achas on it, so it says it only does one kapara, and it doesn't provide the sar hanase b'fnim. Since the Torah says achas, it doesn't provide more than one kapara, the sar hanase b'fnim. And hein eina mechapim kapara, saying the other way around, that the other seirim are not mechaper on someone who has a yediyah b'tchila ve'en b'yediyah b'sayif, that it's toila. Amakra achas b'shana kapara zu lo tehei ela achas b'shana. There says achas b'shana. That tells you that there's only one thing that can provide a kapara for or be toila this oven of yediyah b'tchila ve'en b'yediyah b'sayif, and that is only the sar hanase b'fnim, nothing else. So that's why, even according to Reb Meir, the sar hanase b'fnim and what it's mechaper on is excluded. It's not in the same basket with everything else, like Reb Meir says. Tanya nami hachi. We have a brayso that says al she'em b'yediyah loy b'tchila v'loy b'sayif. Right, something that doesn't have yediyah, not in the beginning and not at the end, which according to Reb Shimon and Reb Meir, that's going to be Reb Meir. I mean, Reb Shimon says that's only going to be from Reb Shimon's going to say it's only going to be from the Sa'ir Regalim. And according to Reb Meir, that's also going to be included. Which is the Sa'ir Hanase B'chutz. Which according to Reb Shimon would be the Sa'ir Rosh Chodesh. According to Reb Meir, Sa'ir Regalim, Sa'ir Rosh Chodesh, and Sa'ir Hanase B'chutz, Mechaper. All three of them are going to be Mechaper, and all three of those things that need kapara. Divrei Reb Meir. That's Reb Meir's shita. That's all put together in one basket. V'ilu sar hanase b'fnim shayara. The kaparosa nami shayram. However, Reb Shimon, Reb Meir did not mention in this brayso, so we didn't mention anything about the sar hanase b'fnim and what the sar hanase b'fnim, which is to be toila on yesh b'yediyah b'tchila ve'en b'yediyah b'sayf. It wasn't mentioned, like we just explained, because that's separated in a different basket. That's not included. Because it says achas, it says achas, first of all, it only provides one kapara, and this is going to come up again later. And also, achas b'shana, that kapara can only come from a single carbon. So then the Mishnah continued on, and Reb Shimon asked a question on Reb Meir. So first Reb Shimon repeated over his shita. He was asking that if you'll have a case where they asked on he asked on Reb Meir, if you'll have, they asked I think on Reb Shimon, if you'll have a case where a person had a carbon that was set aside for one of these things and then was left over, Reb Shimon, who disagrees with Meir, would say you could still use it. That carbon that had been set aside for one sire can be used for a different sire. So they said, if they're providing a different kapara, how could it be interchanged? And he said, no, everything that's for Tumas Mikdash Ukdashav is all included, even though they don't all provide kapara for one another according to Reb Shimon, they still are unified. That was the Masu Matan in the Mishnah. I know it was like a week and a half ago. So that was what we had a very lamdish Mishnah that asked the kasha and answered. So Zaktamar, according to Reb Shimon, Bishlam the Rosh Chadashim, Reb Shimon disagrees with Reb Meir. Reb Shimon he agrees with Reb Meir to the extent that if you set aside one of these karbanos and then it became unable to be used, it was lost and then it was refound, that it could be used interchangeably for a different sar. But he still disagrees and he says it doesn't provide the same kapara as the other one. So now the Gemara is asking based on that. Now we're saying in the Mishnah that they have some similarity. Why Taka doesn't Rav Shimon learn that they're like Rav Meir, that they're all going to be mechaper on one another? So the ones on Rosh Chadashim according to Rav Shimon that it's only mechaper on a tamei she'achal kodesh. It's not going to be mechaper on regalim, meaning on ein b'yediyah b'tchila ein b'yitzi b'sayif. The amakra oven. The Torah says the lashon oven on the sire of Rosh Chodesh. Oven echad hu noisa ve'eina noisa shtei avainis. Since it says a lashon yachid, that tells you that the sire of Rosh Chodesh can only be mechaper on one thing. Ela the regalim nichperu ad Rosh Chodesh. And what about the other way around? The sire regalim that we said is only mechaper on ein b'yediyah ve'ein b'yediyah b'tchila ve'ein b'yediyah b'sayif. Let it also be mechaper on that which Rosh Chodashim is mechaper on, meaning a tar she'oichel tamei. Amakra oisa. The Torah says Lagabe the sawyer, I think it's the sawyer of Rosh Chodesh. Oisa noisa oven ve'in acha noisa oven. That tells you that the sawyer of Rosh Chodesh is the only. I'm sorry, it's on the sawyer of Rosh Chodesh is the only thing that can be mechaper on this tar she'achol kodesh, but nothing else can be mechaper, and that's why regalim, the sar of regalim, is excluded. Zak the Gemara, Bishlama de regalim le mechaper madiyim kippurim. The amakra achas bashan. The Torah says that the carbon of regalim can't be mechaper on the yom kippurim, meaning the sar hanase bechutz, which is mechaper on ein b'yediyah b'tchila v'yesh b'yediyah b'sayif. Because the Torah says the sar of Yom Kippurim, Achas B'Shana, that this kapara only happens once a year. So only the sar of Yom Kippurim can be mechaper on it, not the sar of regalim. It's a different day. El Yom Kippurim nichperu ad regalim. What about the other way around? Why can't the sar nasa b'chutz on Yom Kippur be mechaper on a sar which ein b'yediyah b'tchila v'yesh b'yediyah b'sayif? Amakra achas. Kapara achas mechaper ve'eina mechaper shtei kaparas. It says the gabi the sar of Yom Kippur, the sar b'chutz. Well, we're going to see the sar of Yom Kippur. It says that it only is mechaper on one thing. Back to Gemara. How could you say that the achas that it says on Yom Kippur is coming to tell you the sar nasa b'chutz cannot be also mechaper on ein b'yediyah b'tchila ve'ein b'tchila ve'ein b'sayif? That achas is not on the sar hanasa b'chutz on Yom Kippur. It's the sar hanasa b'fnim. So the Gemara amakra milvad chatas hakipurim. On the base, it says except for the chatas hakipurim, the iskish chitzin lepnimi. The Torah says when that it says that the chatzas the sar hachitzin, the sar yom kippur, the sar hachitzin, the sar that's brought bachutz. It says it's brought in addition to the chatas hakipurim, meaning the sar nasa b'fnin. That's makish, the two of them together. So therefore, it's a hekish of the chitzin the pnimi legabi this din, not to say obviously that they're machaper on what each other one is machaper. Like we saw before in Reb Meir, we had a drasha to tell you that that's impossible. But it's ishkas zelazeh legabi this that when it says achas that it's only going to be mechaper that that it only could be mechaper on its own thing. That's going to learn out for the sar nasa b'chutz, at least according to Reb Shimon, and tell you that it can also be mechaper on the sar harugalim on a someone who had ein b'yadi b'tchila bein b'sai. Okay, that is Reb Meir and Reb Shimon. That was Reb Meir, and then we said Reb Shimon's reason why he disagreed with Reb Meir, and why Reb Meir said all the limudim go together, they're mixed together, and Reb Yehuda disagreed. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, I'm a Mishmai. Then we had a different version of Reb Shimon, where he said that the limudim go in escalating order. The more, let's put it this way, the more kaddish the thing that you're being mechaper from, the more serious or the more the bigger an oven it is, the more you remember it, or the more of the more chamer it is, essentially. That kapara can also be mechaper on the less chamadika things. So the least chamadika thing is a tar sha'achal batami. That's not a chi of karas. So that we said the sar ish chaydish is mechaper on, and that's the sar ish chaydish. That's the only thing it's mechaper on. The next least chamer is the sar regalim. That's mechaper on ein b'yediyah b'tchila ve'ein b'yediyah b'sayf. That person, the ein b'yediyah b'tchila ve'ein b'yediyah b'sayf, is clearly the least at fault of all the yediyahs, because he didn't know anything both before and then afterwards. And that the sar haregalim is mechaper, but the sar haregalim, in addition to being mechaper on that, will also be mechaper on what the sar ish chaydish was mechaper on, meaning a tamish achal b'kaydish. And then the next level is the sar hanasa b'fnim. That's mechaper on ein b'yediyah b'tchila v'yesh b'yediyah b'sayf, which is again not like someone has a yediyah b'tchila, which would be subject to the ayla v'yayred, but he's ein b'yediyah b'tchila. So that carbon, the carbon of the sar of Yom Kippur b'chutz, is going to be mechaper not just on that case, but also ein b'yediyah bein b'tchila bein b'sayf, as well as tamei sha'achal tar sha'achal batam. That's Reb Shimon. Yehuda says b'shem Reb Shimon. That's his version of Reb Shimon. Why is it that the sar of Rosh Chodesh that we said is the least chomer, it's not mechaper on the regalim? It says on the sar of Rosh Chodesh, it says oven, so it's a lashon yachid. The reason is not like I just said that it goes from least chomer to more chomer. We're going to learn it out from psukim, but that's the way it works. That's the description. So it says oven echad. It's only going to be the sir Rosh Chodesh is only mechaper on one thing. The regalim nami loy nichbru ad rosh chadashim. But according to Reb Shimon b'shem Reb Shimon ben Yehuda says b'shem Reb Shimon, the sar of regalim is mechaper on that which the sar of Rosh Chodesh is the sar of that which is the sar of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper. So why does that work? Why is the sar of regalim mechaper on the Rosh Chodesh? The amakra oisa hu noisa oven bein acha noisa oven. It says oisa on it. The Rosh Chodashim, it says so it should be precluded. The regalim should also be precluded from. Should only be mechaper on its thing and not on something else. In this version of Rav Shimon ben Yehuda's version of Rav Shimon, he doesn't darshan oisa. So Gemara, Maishna de Regalim de Loy Mechapri ad Yom Kippurim. Why is that of the carbon that brought for Regalim, which is Mechaper Ein B'Yediyah Bein B'Tchila Bein B'Sayf? Why is not Mechaper on the Sor Hanasa B'Chutz of Yom Kippur? That's Mechaper on Ein B'Yediyah B'Tchila V'Yesh B'Yediyah B'Sayf. So Gemara, the Amakra Achas B'Shana Kapara Zuloite Achas B'Shana. It says the Gabi the Sor Yom Kippur. That it's only achas bashana, so it only can get a kapara once a year. So therefore, the sar of regalim as well as the sar of Rish Chodesh, even though the sar of Rish Chodesh we already had a limud. So zakamara ihachi diyam kippurim nami leinichbara de regalim. Let the sar of Yom Kippur also not be mechaper on the sar of Yom Kippur b'chutz. Let it also not be mechaper on that of regalim, meaning sar yesh b'yediyah b'tchila. I'm sorry, ein b'yediyah bein b'tchila bein b'sayf. So the Gemara achas kapara achas mechaper ve'ein mechaper shtei kaparas. I'm sorry, it says achas mechaper ve'ein mechaper shtei kaparas. Why don't we say the achas? We'll say that the soyer of Yom Kippur should not be able to also be mechaper, include Shal Regalim as well as Shal Rish Chodesh. So Gemara achas le mashmalei. He doesn't darshan achas. So if the Gemara, amai. So the Gemara, what does that mean? It means why is it that it says achas? That is not he's going to disregard it. Because it said he said he did understand the achas by the soyer of Rish Chodesh, that it's only mechaper on its own thing, right? Right. He had said Maishna the Regalim Dolem Chapi Ad Yom Kippurim, and he said Amakra Achas Bashana, which it says the Chipa Aaron al Karnois of Achas Bashana Midam Chatas HaKippurim Achas Bashana Yichaper Lov L'Daroi Seicha. That tells you that the soyer of Regalim is not going to be Mechaper Yom Kippur because it says Achas Bashana that there's only one kapara for that of Yom Kippur, and now we're saying that even though it says achas, the Yom Kippurim nami lechaper regalim achas ksiv. It says achas on Yom Kippur. It shouldn't be able to be mechaper on the regalim because achas should tell you achas mechaper and mechaper shtei kaparas. We had darshan before when we were explaining why Rav Shimon was chaylik on Rav Meir. We said the achas goes both ways. It tells you both achas bashana, that only one thing can bring this kapara, and also achas that this thing only provides one kapara. But now we're trying to split it in Reb Shimon ben Yehuda's version of Rav Shimon, and we're trying to say that only half of it is true. That we're going to say that the soyer of Yom Kippur, the soyer nasa b'chutz, we're going to say achas only one thing can be mechaber on it, meaning only the soyer of nasa b'chutz can be mechaber on it. But we're not going to say the second part that achas that only this thing is only mechaper on one oven. We're not going to say this. So do you darshan achas or not? Zak Gemara, the chiksiv. So what's the reason? Why is Rav Shimon going to say like this? The chiksiv achas b'sar nasa b'fnim ksiv. When it says achas in this pasuk, it's talking about the sar nasa b'fnim, and so that achas is not going to. Therefore, it's not saying that it's only going to be mechaper on one thing. If that's the case, what about the other way around? Let's say the achas. The reason why we said the regalim cannot be mechaper Yom Kippur is we said achas tells you only one thing can be mechaper, not two. So tomorrow the chiksiv achas b'sar nasa b'fnim ksiv. According to what we're saying now, it's on the nasa b'fnim, so it's not going to tell you that regalim can't be mechaper on sar nasa b'fnim. So tomorrow la'olam achas mashmale. Dr. Gemara, no, really, Rishon ben Yehuda is going to darshan achas. But Bashani Hachad Amarka B'chipa Aaron al Chanoisav Achas Bashan. Chanoisav Dozea Avli Yehuda Kapara Achas Mechaper. Ve'ene Mechaper Shtei Kaparas. The Mashmoy, since it says a lashon like this, B'chipa Aaron al Chanoisav, that means that Aaron, that's talking about that's a reference specifically to the Sor Hanasa B'Pnim, and it's saying that it's only going to be Mechaper, that the Sor Hanasa B'Zeach HaPnimi only gets a kapar achas, that it's mechaper, but it's not mechaper shtei kaparas. Hadachitz and afilu shtei kaparas. But that mashmoyis of when we said achas over there does not extend to the Sor Hanasa B'chutz. That is actually mechaper on all the different seirim. I mean, not the Sor Hanasa B'Pnim, but all the other seirim that are brought.
So it goes up to the, in other words, according to Rav Shimon Yehuda, the Sor Hanasa B'Pnim does not encompass all the other ones.
I don't think so.
I think
it's like Rav Meir that's in a separate category.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to start a different topic. We're going to get started with it. We're not going to go very far into it. Amru Lam Rabbi Yochanan. Tmidin shaloi hutzruchu l'tzibur. Every day there were two carbon tomids that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash. If you remember back when we learned Shkalim, we learned that the shekel, the machzis hashekel that was brought every day, was designated for the tmidim. But the amount, there's a whole cheshbon in Rashi, the amount that was set aside, they had to put in a few extra because they had to inspect the tmidim for 4 days before they used it. They had to set aside a little bit of extra money for these tmidim. Once that money was set aside, once these animals were set aside to be used as a tamid, they get a tumas haguf, and they can no longer be used for a different carbon. And you can't use a tamid that was set aside for 1 year for the following year. So you have a couple of extra tmidim that were put in because you had to always have 3 lined up to be ready. And at the end of the year, which is by Nisan, when you end the year for the purposes of the machzis hashekel, you have to start using from the New Year's machzis hashekel. You have a couple of tmidim that was set aside with the kedushas haguf of a tamid that are no longer able to be used because the money that we used to buy them is the wrong year's money. So tmidim shalei hutzruchu l'tzibur, those tmidim that were left over, niftin tmidim, they have a new rule. Generally, the rule is that you can't be paid to something with kedushas haguf, but rule says b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan holds that these tmidim that was set aside can be paid. You pay to them, then you take the money and you could rebuy those. That the kedusha goes on to that money from the animals, and then you rebuy those animals with the New Year's machzis hashekel money. Yosef Rabba v'ka'amalol hashmaitza. Rabba was saying over this b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei Rav Chizda man tzayisla. Chizda said, "Who's going to agree with such a thing? There's no such thing as being paida something that has a kedushas haguf while it's a tamim, while it doesn't have a mum. We're all familiar that a carbon that has kedushas haguf, once it gets a mum, then you could be paida. But this idea that you could be paida something that's a tam that has no mum, nobody's going to go along with. Rabbi Yochanan Rabcha, Matzayach Lacha Rabbi Yochanan Rabcha. Who's going to agree with you and to your Rebbe? How did you dispense of the kedusha? This had a kedusha haguf. How can, by giving money, how can you make the kedusha go away? I'm not sure. I think what he means to say is that now you've transferred that kedusha into this money. So now this money also has the same kedusha that it has to be used for this year's. It has the machzis hashekel from this year, and it's going to be restricted of what you could use it from. This, you haven't gotten rid of the restriction. The whole point is to try to free up these 3 tmidim that can't be used for this year. But All you've done is shifted into a new place. But he said, so Rabba said, Rav Chizda said, you're going to say you can't get rid of it. You don't agree that there's such a concept that there are cases where we don't worry about where the kedusha goes to, but not. Meiser Haktaris, a very similar situation like we had with the Tmidim, also they had with the Ketairis. They would make the amount of Ketairis they would prepare for each year also came from the Machzis HaShekel, and that money was set aside. That Ketairis was, I don't know if it was made for the Machzis HaShekel, but it was set aside for that year. It had to be from money that was given in that year, and they always made extra ketairos. The amounts that they made it, the increments that they made it were more than 1 year. There's a whole big cheshbon of it, like it was a mana, and the mana is larger than 365, and they also have some years there was only 354 days. It depended on whether it was a iber or not. But you always had a couple of extra batches of ketairos. What did you do with it? But what would they do with it? What they would do is they would take from the money that they had set aside to buy these ketairos, and they would use that to be paida. To be paid, the part of the money was intended to be paying the and it was that was a legitimate use of the machzis the ketairos money. Part of the money that was set aside that had the kedushas haguf that was intended to be used for the ketairos was also to pay for the work of the the people who made the ketairos. So you would take some of that and give it to the and that would make it that money now is no longer kodesh. And then take that money that had been given to the umnin and have them. They would be paida the actual ketairos on that money, and this is all done in order that we shouldn't be using outside money to be paida this ketairos that has kedushas haguf. And then they would, now that you taken off the kedusha from the actual ketairos by using the mois of the umnin to be paid it, you would then go and use new money from the new year and buy the ketairos that was left over, so it wouldn't have to be wasted. Why do we have the same problem? If you're claiming that we say that you can never, once there's a kedushas haguf, you can't be paid it. Obviously, ketairos, there's no such thing as getting a mum in it. So it's equivalent to a tamid that's tamim, and even so, we're saying you can be paid it. Amalei ketairos ka'amrit shani ketairos the kedushas damimhu. He says no, you're mistaken. What you're trying to compare ketairos to the tamid, the ketairos never gets a kedushas haguf. The kedusha of the ketairos, the machlekes depends on whether when you place it into the kli in order to crush it, is that called a kli sharas that is mekadosh ketairos? He disagrees. He says no. I think the kedusha of the ketairos is never kedushas damim. It's just a kedushas. It's never kedushas haguf. It's only kedushas damim. Kedushas damim. Clearly, there's no problem with being paida. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll probably review this again tomorrow. We'll be live. And I could see your faces of befuddlement right in front of me.
Very good, guys.
Have a great day.